Hello, collegiate community. I am Molly Prince, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our Collegiate College Counseling Conversations.
Yes, and I'm Candace Johnson, along with Ms. Prince. Welcome to this recording. And we have some great information to share with you about what your students can be doing now in terms of college admission. And we're going to talk through the things. And actually, Molly, if you don't mind, we can go ahead and go to the next slide and I'll just talk about the goals for our time together. Whether you're watching this early in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening time, our goals in this presentation is to talk through admissibility, trends, and how colleges make decisions. And that will help you in terms of helping your student make decisions for their college placement. Also, strategies for building a college list. We'll talk financial aid and scholarships, how to develop an effective testing plan. And then at the end, we'll talk about a timeline, what your students can be working on now, this semester, second semester, summer into senior year, and how we as a college counseling team, because we truly are a team, how we can best support your student.
Wonderful. Thank you, Candace. So really to take a look at some of those trends, we've seen the college landscape really change significantly in the last 25 years and even the last 5 years. We've seen some really big changes that we'd love to talk to you all about. The first thing is that admission numbers continue to increase every year. Initially, that increase came almost a generation ago when the Common App was introduced, and it just made it so much easier for students to apply to more schools. And then the other big change that's really bumped that in just the last few years is that schools are test optional. So all this, or a number of schools are test optional. So all of a sudden, students see schools that seemed out of their reach before because of a test score, but now they don't have to submit that test score, and it makes that school a lot easier to apply to. So those numbers are going up. Because those numbers are going up, but there's still only the same number of seats, acceptance rates are coming down. Also, more and more schools are filling their classes from their early decision pool. In fact, some schools are up to over 60%. So we'll talk a lot about what that early decision landscape looks like and how to navigate it. We also have more and more schools kind of strategically using their waiting list, and that almost ends up looking like an early decision 3 category, and we can talk through that a bit. Also, demonstrated interest. Schools wanting to know that the student really likes them is huge. And because we live in such a digital landscape, schools can absolutely track at least what kind of virtual engagement students are having and why that's so important to schools. And lastly, as we mentioned a little bit ago, that we do have a much more broad test optional landscape. Right now, 74% of four-year colleges in the United States are test optional, and that just seems to go up every single day. That's in response to COVID-19 and a lot of other reasons as well. So those are some trends that are shaping today and shaping next year and the year after that. Also within those trends, we can see this is really just showing kind of what we discussed. Schools that maybe in 2005 admitted had 17,000 student applicants like Yale, today have 32,000. So, twice that, more than twice that. And that's just a small selective school. So our small liberal arts colleges, we certainly see it. But at some of the bigger schools like Georgia Tech, where their number of applicants is, 7, 8 times as much, has really changed the admissions rate. We used to think, lots of students can get into that school. And now we say, no, fewer than 20%. And that's if they're in state. Out of state, it's even more competitive. So just to know that schools that seemed pretty accessible a decade ago or 2 decades ago, have a different story to tell now.
So thank you, Molly, so much for sharing that information. And so when, and this really graphic just really displays all the factors that go into admission decisions. Sometimes it's hard to see those bubbles. And so what we appreciate about sharing this information, just to give you a wide picture of what all factors are considered in terms of admission decisions. Of course, GPA, test scores, the student's interests and things of that nature and more. But in looking at admissions and financial aid offers, there's all these other buckets, right, at a college or university. So colleges have to be strategic about their academic programming and students being admitted into certain programs and majors. Of course, athletics is huge in that. Development financial stability at college or university. Also, rankings play a part in the admissions decisions as well. Bond ratings, schools and their arts program, and also diversity goals that colleges have for admissions as well.
Yay. Thank you, Candace. So yeah, there's a lot that colleges have to consider when they decide who they say, yes, come be our class of 2026 or whichever year we're on to next. A big trend that we talked a little bit ago about is early decision pools. And this is something that just grows stronger and stronger as a factor every year. So I've got a graphic here that I hope can make sense. What we're seeing here, the black circle represents all of the students who apply to a school early decision. So that's all of the students who apply, and that's the data that gets reported. So out of all of these students in that circle, the average GPA was a 3.6. And the average ACT was a 28. And this is a hypothetical school. This isn't a school in particular, but we'll look at some particular schools in a moment. And so, maybe we have a student who says, hey, I have 3.6. I have a 28. I'm perfect for this school. I think I'm probably going to get in. But what we realize is there are really two different applicant pools. There's our early decision pool, and the school is going to take between 35% and 55% of their students. So, perhaps half or even more than half of their students from that smaller number of applicants. We can see that little triangle is smaller, fewer students apply that way. And then they're going to take 45% to 65% from the larger pool there. So in this smaller pool, in this early decision pool, these are students who have said, yes, I want to go to your school. And in fact, if I get in, I'm definitely coming. I promise I will come. And in fact, the student signed a paper that says they guarantee to that decision. The family signs a paper saying, well, technically you sign it on screen, but the family makes an agreement that they plan on their child going to that school if admitted. And even the college counselors, Dr. Johnson and I, sign an electronic agreement saying we agree that if the child is admitted, that's where they go to school. Well, it turns out that pool of applicants, and again, it's a smaller pool, probably has a slightly softer profile. Their GPA may be a little bit lower, and their ACT is a little bit lower as well. And the college is willing to have a softer profile for that pool because they know those students are going to say yes. They know that those students will come to their campus if they're admitted. But we have this average over here. We have this 3.6 and 28, and that's what got reported to US News and World Report. So where did those numbers come from? Well, that means their regular decision pool, all of the students in this bigger part of the circle had to have a higher profile. So maybe that regular decision pool had to have a GPA of 3.9 and ACT of 33. And so when we have a student who says, I want to go to this school, I know this is the perfect school for me, our first question is going to be, well, how do you want to apply? Are you going to apply early decision? You love this school and you know you'll go no matter what? Or are you going to apply regular decision? And then it's a different profile. So just to be aware that in terms of admissions, there are some advantages to applying early decision. There's some disadvantages as well, and we can talk through that. But to know that really when we see these numbers, that 3.6, that 28, or whatever the school specifics are, that we really have to know that those come from two different pools of applicants. So yeah, those aren't quite accurate. Candace, I'll let you go here.
Yes, absolutely. So just wanted to show a sample admissions rubric. So we know students are, and I think about the seniors, Molly, that Ms. Prince, that we're helping now as they're doing their Common App and they're listing these things, right? We're going to send the transcript. So admission offices and counselors are receiving this information. They may have a rubric that they're using and ranking or scoring each student's application. So these are just some of the things that they will take into consideration. Of course, GPA and grades, the rigor of their high school curriculum. So our students know that language and we'll hear that. And as we have family meetings in the future, we'll talk through that even as we're planning for senior year and the classes that your students will be taking as we look ahead to college admissions. Of course, testing, their leadership involvement. And so I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but we'll talk about just some tips on that in terms of getting prepared for applying to college. Personal, the activities, their involvement, and other special considerations. And so if we keep going.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And if you click one more time or keep clicking, and you all can see just from this, again, this is just a sample that an admissions committee may use as they're going through a student's application and scoring it. And so in this example of the students scoring, they received a 16 out of 23. And so why is this information important, right? I'm skipping to the second bullet point, but I'll come back to the first one. I'll kind of do those together. But data definitely is empowering. I think it's so critical that families, as well as us as college counselors know this information so we can share it with you, which we're doing now, so you can understand the process and see the whole picture, right? Not just what your student is doing in terms of them working diligently in class, them being involved in activities and preparing for applying into senior year, but also what's happening on the college side as well, matching assets and strengths to opportunities that your students have. And then also important to discuss other areas of fit within admissibility and financial value, right? As you start to think about which schools are going to be best for my student and what's that affordable factor for us. And we want to also ensure as your students are going through this process that there's an efficient use of their time and even money, maybe your money in terms of helping them to apply and ultimately getting on campus. But I think number 1 and 2, or really the first bullet point, is so critical that we want to bring some clarity and understanding to the admissions process for our families.
Thank you, Candace. Okay, so one of the things that we love doing with our students is helping them build their own college list. And this is a big part of their college search and application process. Some students want to start that list by what they've read in a magazine or what they've heard their friend or their cousin or their uncle say. And not that those details can't be valuable as well, but we're really going to ask them to start that list by thinking about themselves, of really, how do they want to grow? What are they passionate about or curious about? Maybe what part of the country they want to live, at least for 4 years. And sometimes those 4 years, as we all know, lead to a lot more. How they learn, there are going to be some schools with different learning approaches, and they want to find one that really fits best for them. This is a tough one, especially sometimes for a junior in high school, but it's one of the most fundamental of what do they value? What is important to them? And absolutely, we just want to be really clear and open with this process from the beginning of college usually is not free. So what is a family able to afford or willing to afford? So all of those things are important. And that's where we ask students to start, is really start the process for the college, which is out there within themselves. So how do we do that? Well, we talk about this fit a lot, and they hear these 3 factors a lot of it needs to fit them academically and socially. Ideally, it's a school they're going to get into, that when we build a list, we like it to be balanced, to have some schools that maybe are a reach. We don't know if that's going to work out, but heck, let's try. Schools that we think are probably going to work out, that if we were placing bets, we'd place it on that one. Sometimes we lose bets, but generally we think it's going to work out. And then schools that are clear admits. Our basketball team loves to say our slam dunks. So, those are also that admissibility, building a strong list that's balanced. And again, coming back to, it's not a good fit for a student if it's not affordable. So those are the 3 factors that we look to make sure are included in a list. Going back to the students knowing themselves, in junior year, in 2nd or 3rd quarter, all of our junior students are in a co-ed class called College 101 that Dr. Johnson and I get to lead, and we really enjoy that. Part of College 101, they do a youth science activity. It's part of their SCORE, which is the platform they use to research schools and help apply to schools. But youth science really helps them take an inventory of their strengths. So there are 11 different strength assessments that really just assess, your natural gifts. What were you born with? And everything from recognizing change in details to organizing data to creative problem solving. That's my favorite one to see. What are the gifts that you not necessarily learned in school, but what are just the ways you were wired from the get-go that will perhaps work really well in a specific career field? And then those 11 assessments are paired with affinities. What do you enjoy? What do you like? With all of that data, the wonderful youth science algorithm shares with students different career fields that they might want to explore that play both to their natural strengths and to their affinities. And then also, and this is the part we like, says, if this is a career field you want, here are some schools with some outstanding programs in, whether it's physical therapy or psychology or, whatever is the career fields that it suggests. It doesn't absolutely plan out their life for them, but I like that it helps them understand their own strengths and it gives them some ideas of things to explore that maybe they hadn't thought about. So that's one tool that we use in helping them build their college list. Another I mentioned a moment ago is SCORE, which is the platform that we use to help them study schools. So I'm not sure how well this shows up on the screen, but you can see on the left are all the different factors that a student can use to narrow a college list. Right now, there are about 2,300 four-year colleges and universities in the United States. That's an awful lot. So what SCORE does is it allows them to start to limit certain areas. They can choose an academic focus. So maybe they only want schools that have a chemical engineering major or only want schools that have a poetry major. They can put personal interests. So maybe they also want the school that has a poetry major to have a hiking club or have a large service component. They can do distance from home. So maybe they want a school within 100 miles, or maybe they want a school that's more than 200 miles. They can adjust that. Test scores, they can adjust test scores and acceptance rates. So if they're looking for a highly selective school, they can put that in there and it'll again limit that list. Or maybe they just, maybe we're on to that. Hey, let's find some clear admits. What are those schools we know you're going to get into? And we can adjust it there. The size. So do they want a small liberal arts school, maybe like 1,500, 2,500 students? Do they want a large state school, 30,000, 40,000? They can put that in there. Athletics, do they want to make sure that it has an ice hockey team? Again, just all sorts of factors that students and families, parents and guardians have access to this too, to help them begin to limit those schools. SCORE is very numeric. So the algorithm that we were kind of talking about there on the left of the different factors, a student can use to look up a particular school. So this is, I looked up Elon. So these are, once you look up a school on SCORE, it's going to give you the numerics about the school, the size. This one is my favorite, the retention rate, how many students stay after their freshman year. If it's 80 or above, that's good. If it's 90 or above, that's really good. Diversity, gender diversity, ethnic diversity. So lots of interesting facts there. Another interesting numerics that SCORE has is where are the students from? So Elon's in North Carolina. It's probably not surprising that most of their students are from North Carolina. Again, SCORE is super numeric. Good to know, but schools are a lot more than a number. I like to think that colleges, universities, really any place has a personality. I happen to love Louisville Collegiate School's personality.
Yes.
I think it's very positive and encouraging and growth focused. So to find out more about the school's personality, FISC Guide is a great resource. We have several copies, probably double digits by now in our offices that students can borrow. A family can also get one on Amazon or online or at a bookstore. It's not too expensive. It's a good investment. If you have a couple of children in your home and you get the 2021 version, it will be good in 2023 or 2024. So I don't think it has to be repurchased every year. A couple other books we like, the College Finder has schools listed by certain categories. So you could look for a school with the best Spanish majors and it'll have a list of the best Spanish programs, but not just academic list. They have a list of different activities. So you could look for the school with the best ultimate Frisbee team or the school, you kind of characteristics, like you could look for the most conservative school, the most liberal school. But it just has great lists. So if a student has something that they know they want in a college, they can look it up in the College Finder. And then once they have those lists, we'd like to go back to the FISC Guide and learn about the personality of that school. Last one is just a book that I think we really enjoy. Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. As much as we care about college counseling, we want students to know that lots of colleges can give them the career path that they want. If there's a certain career path, there's not just one school for that career path. So all sorts of resources there. I will try to be a bit more brief here. But also the best resource, if possible, is to get to the school. If you can go in person, that is ideal. If you go in person, register for the information session, take the tour, walk around campus, be bold and talk to a stranger. I'd love for our students to walk up to a student on that campus and say, hey, do you have 3 minutes? Tell me what it's like to be a freshman here. But really to truly get a sense of the vibe of that campus. That said, financially, it's not always possible to visit every school. And we live in a time when it's not always safe to travel. So we can also visit schools virtually. Dr. Johnson has done an amazing job of coordinating the admissions visits to collegiate. We have a lot of admissions officers coming in person, and we have admissions officers coming virtually. So not only can you see the school's presence online and take a virtual tour there, because Dr. Johnson has organized this so beautifully, we have representatives coming from the schools either in person or virtually to share more information about them. So that visit also is a great thing. If you are in the area and just happening to be taking, say, a Thanksgiving trip down to Nashville, say, Swanee's not that far, so if there's a school that's nearby and you can just kind of check them out, it's worth, if it's a handy visit, that's really worth it. That was a ton about making that list. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Johnson, who's going to share a little bit about how to pay for that list.
Yes. Oh, so good. So good, Ms. Prince. And I am just, before I jump into financial aid, thank you for that shout out. It truly is a team effort in terms of the representatives visiting campus. And we really, really encourage our juniors to come in and listen to the reps. We've had some amazing schools and still more on the list. And so they can actually use which we did show all the juniors that during an advisory meeting, probably about a week or so ago, where they can see the schools that are coming and just click a button that says, count me in. And we definitely want them to register so we know how many to expect. So that's my PSA.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the visits on campus. So now let's talk, we're ready to talk financial aid now. And so, as we think about fit, and Ms. Prince did a wonderful job of those kind of like 3 buckets in terms of students finding that fit, one being affordability. And so it's good to know what is available for your students in terms of financial aid. And so you probably have heard these terms before, but if you haven't, or even if you have, it's good to share the information. And so when we think about financial aid, you'll hear these 2 things a lot. You'll hear merit-based aid and need-based aid. And so merit-based aid mostly comes from the institution, and you may hear institutions call it institutional aid, right? All those terms. And so that merit-based is going to be based on a student's academics. What were their performance as far as GPA in high school, and also test scores. And so some of those top scholarships at colleges are going to be based on those things. And the student may be required to write an essay and submit recommendation letters to apply for those merit-based programs. And then need-based is actually going to be based on family income. That's where the FAFSA form becomes so important. I'll talk about that shortly. And so in terms of need-based aid, there are grants available from the federal government, from the state of Kentucky, if a student is planning to stay in state for college. And also institutions have grants that they award students that are need-based. Work study. I don't know if any family or parent did a work study when they were in school. I was blessed to be able to do that. And that is where students are working perhaps in the dining hall at their campus or in the bookstore or as a student assistant in the library, but an opportunity for students to work and earn money that can go towards paying for that tuition, room and board. And then there are student loans that are need-based that students can borrow from the federal government. There are also private entities, private lenders that offer loans for students. I didn't put this on here, but now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, I didn't mention that there are loans that parents can borrow as well that may not be based on need, but that aren't based on need, excuse me. And so we can keep moving forward. Ms. Prince, thank you so much. So other types of aid that are available, I mentioned institutional aid that falls under that merit base, but also scholarships, which is like my favorite word ever. scholarships that students can be awarded from the state of Kentucky. You're probably familiar with the KEYS program, and that stands for the Kentucky Educational Excellence Scholarship, where students are awarded a scholarship based on their GPA as a high school student and for their highest ACT score before they graduate. If you have further questions about that, please feel free to reach out to myself or Ms. Prince. If your student is considering staying in state or attending a college out of state that perhaps doesn't have a major program that's offered in Kentucky, there are a few states that will allow a student to use their KEYS money out of state. And so I won't get into all those details right now, but it's called the Academic Common Market. And Ms. Prince or myself can definitely share more information about that if you have questions. And then I mentioned institutional aid and kind of previewed this. You know, some colleges have prestigious scholar programs where students are applying into those, and those offer scholarship opportunities as well as maybe internship opportunities embedded within the scholar program, study abroad opportunities. So those are programs that, you know, our students are applying for, and we encourage them to apply for that. And that information can easily be found on the college websites and even in conversation with those admissions counselors as your students are going to start to connect with. And then what other scholarships are out there? Where there are private organizations and businesses locally in our state and even nationally that offer scholarships to students. Some of them are huge corporations and some of them are small corporations and businesses. And so if students and you all have questions about those or want some examples, both Ms. Prince and I can share that information with you. And as we receive information from area businesses, we share that with students and encourage them to apply, especially if there is a need for that. And then there are community organizations that also offer scholarships. I'll shout out the Community Foundation of Louisville as an example. I'm sure you're familiar with those, especially because we're just coming off of Give for Good Louisville Day. But the Community Foundation also houses about 50 to 60 scholarships that students here in the Louisville area and surrounding counties can apply for. And some scholarships can be used at institutions across the United States, but then there are some that are specific to certain schools. And so we encourage students to apply for that. The application comes out in December of a student's senior year. And so, well, every December, but for your students, it'll be when they apply is December of senior year. And then there are scholarship databases. I mean, if you get, excited, you could just type in the word scholarships on your Google search and you will find a lot of different websites and databases that your students can, build a profile, kind of similar to SCORE, where a student would build a profile, it saves that information. And then that database, for example, I remember using FastWeb and sharing with students about FastWeb. It's one of those national organizations that houses scholarships, and students will get a lot of emails about different scholarships they can apply for.
Thank you. There's so much good information there. It's really, I know that's just the tip of the iceberg, but thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And there's more.
Yeah, and there's more. Yes. So we got to definitely talk about how to apply, right, for that aid. And so the merit-based aid, what I'm loving, I'm sure Ms. Prince would agree, is that a lot of schools are getting smart about one application. So good. So the same application the student would fill out for admission also serves as the scholarship application, which is great. But that does vary by institution. Some institutions will have a separate scholarship application, and we're definitely helping our students through that process and ensuring that they're filling out what they need to fill out to apply for those scholarships. Private scholarships, they're going to have a separate, when I say private, I mean other organizations besides the college or university. So a business, a nonprofit giving scholarships, they're going to have their own separate scholarship applications. Some are online, some I've seen are still on paper, but a lot of people have moved to doing online or having a portal where students will sign and fill out that application. For the need-based financial aid, and I mentioned this a little bit ago, that the FAFSA is that critical application that students will fill out to apply for need-based financial aid from the federal government, from the state, from that institution. The FAFSA opens up every year, October 1. And so your students, as the amazing junior class, if they are going to complete a FAFSA, they won't do that until October 1, 2022. Sounds crazy to say that, but year, right? And then there's another financial aid application called the CSS profile that some institutions, I've seen more of our selective institutions require that. And I believe it's through the College Board. So the student would be required the FAFSA form and also the CSS profile, which gets into more information about family income and the financial situation of the family.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. You're welcome. And then I think there's just this one more under financial aid scholarships in terms of, yes, so good. So, and rich information. So we encourage you, and we know you all are doing this, are starting to do this. And when we have those family meetings, we'll be talking through this as well. But it's good to have that conversation with your student about affordability and expectations. So we encourage that, that students know that, right, and have those expectations that are set with the family. Some resources to check out in terms of looking at what is affordable for our family, how much does the college cost, what are those costs? We know tuition and room and board, but what are some of those other costs that that may be indirect that a student would have to consider in terms of their college expenses? And so we encourage you to check out the net price calculator. And this calculator is on every single college's website. And you can just search net price calculator. Each college usually has a Google search bar at the top of their computer screen or at the top of the website, where you can plug in financial information and receive an estimate of costs of that college, the net cost of that college. And some even colleges will share information about merit-based and even need-based aid that your student may be eligible for after you fill out that net price calculator. So that just really gives you a picture of, what are we looking at in terms of college costs? What can we afford? Another resource is called Getting the Facts, and that's featured on the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, or KIA for short, .com website. What this does is allow you to choose up to 6 colleges to compare at once. So whereas the net price calculator is just each individual school, Getting the Facts allows you to choose, like I said, up to 6. And then Kent and Levy, I should probably hold up the spreadsheet. I'm just going to do that because I can do that because we're virtual and right here. This spreadsheet is published every year. And what Kent and Levy, what they do, which is so amazing, is that they research colleges and share, what percentage of aid are these colleges awarding to students, how much merit-based aid is being awarded, how much need-based aid is being awarded. So a really good tool as you're thinking about affordability for your student, and it breaks it down by each college.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And I know it's something that really matters to families as they think about college. Okay, so as Dr. Johnson mentioned, many colleges will want to know or like to know a standardized test score, an ACT score or an SAT score. We are in a more test optional landscape, but I think our theme so often is knowledge is power. And part of a knowledge for a student and their family as they think about where to apply is, what might my SAT or ACT score be? So in order for that to be the strongest possible, we want to make that testing happen. Whether we decide to use it or not is a different question, but it's easier to make that decision if we know what that testing is. So for juniors in the fall, and for our collegiate students in about 3 weeks, you will be taking the PSAT, so the practice SAT, on October 13th. That is primarily a practice. We just want our students to have one more exposure to that test. It is also in your junior year, the qualifier for national merit. So if a student is going to qualify for a national merit scholarship program, they're going to be in the top half of the top percent in their state. In scores on the PSAT. So this year, your junior year, again, it's really just practice. And also, perhaps some of our students will be qualifying for National Merit Scholarship consideration with that October 13th test. So all of our juniors will take that October 13th. Additionally, we hope all of our juniors will take a practice ACT that we are offering. This is not required, but we are offering it. It is online this year, which is nice. It's also on demand. So between October 15th and October 18th, a student needs to find about a 3.5-hour window, click to start, and then they can start the test. You'll be receiving more information from us on how to register through that It's through a company called Compass Test Prep, as it is a fantastic test prep company, and not that we are advocating one company or another, and not that we're necessarily advocating for online test prep, but just know as those companies go, it's a really strong one. But we appreciate that they offer this test and the results to all of our students for free. So we like that because then students, you have an SAT and an ACT within 5 days of each other, which tells us those schools or those scores are probably pretty fair measures of your strengths at that particular point in time. So we can use them to figure out, well, which test plays more to your strengths. For most students, it doesn't matter. About 80% of students perform equally well on either test. Doesn't matter which they take. I used to say, well, take whichever one you like more, but I've learned that's not really accurate. The question is, take whichever one you dislike less. But anyway, but if by chance there is one that plays to a student's strengths, because for about 20% of students, there is one that they perform better on, having those two tests within 5 days helps us identify that. And then we can start to make an individual testing plan for that student. You will be getting an email from your college counseling team soon about those junior family meetings. So this is when we sit down with our junior family meetings and say, okay, here we go. We're going to, like, in sincerity, start individual college searches and college application processes not too far down the line. So part of that meeting, part of that junior family college meeting is to really, put the details on what will that individual testing plan be. For most students, not all students, but for most students, that plan means taking either an SAT or ACT early in second semester of junior year, and then a second one later in second semester of junior year. That's for most students. What a student needs for that testing to go especially well is to have completed Algebra 2. So if a student is a junior still completing Algebra 2, we really encourage them to finish that year out. You've got Mrs. Crawford there. She's teaching you everything you need to know. She's doing beautiful test prep in the middle of Survivor games. So for our juniors who are in Algebra 2, we say, get the maximum you can from that class, and then maybe take your first SAT in May of your junior year, and perhaps a second SAT or ACT in June, July, or August of your between your junior and senior year. But most students take it 2 times, maybe 3, maybe they've taken it twice and they feel like that was good, but I know if I work a little bit more on whichever section, I can take it up one more notch. So we've had, some of our seniors taking an ACT or SAT in September of this year. Some of our seniors even taking one more in October. If a student has taken one and is ready to take another, we always encourage them, okay, we'll do some preparation. What are you going to do differently the second time so that it goes even better? And we'll talk in a little bit about different test prep strategies and options. Data shows that the best test prep does not happen the night before the test. The best test prep happens between 12 and 18 weeks in advance of that test. That's an ambitious goal. That's a lot of time, but that's the ideal world. So if a student were had a test plan for June, they'd probably start getting ready for that test maybe in early March. Just in case you want a piece of data, that best test prep is also between 60 and 90 minutes a week. So whether that's 10 minutes a day, every day, or an hour and a half on Sunday afternoon, doesn't matter. But that seems to be where students find the best return on their investment of time and energy. The other thing that students do in the spring of 11th grade is if they are taking AP classes, those AP tests happen in May of junior year. The good news is that there used to be something called subject tests. If you hear anybody asking you about subject tests, sometimes called SAT-2s, COVID had many negative impacts. One positive impact is because of COVID-2, SAT-2 or subject tests don't exist anymore because it just wasn't possible for testing locations to offer both the standardized tests and then these subject tests. So if you hear about subject tests, you don't need to listen. Okay, last thing there again is perhaps in fall of senior year, there's another test. And Also, in fall of senior year, students and their families can decide, do we send these scores to colleges? That so many schools, again, about 3/4 of schools now are test optional, which means we want to send the score if it's at or better than their average, and we don't want to send the score if it's not above their average or not really close to their average. And a student and their family can decide school by school. So maybe they do send the score to University of Kentucky and they don't send it to a different school. So we can, that's something that your college counselors, we're so excited to help you figure that out school by school. Okay, so I talked a little bit about test prep options. Again, we all do better at things when we practice, and a test is one more things that we can practice for. Different options. There's the individual tutoring route, either in person or online. We have some names that we can share with you, although we know our list is limited. There are a lot more out there and a lot more great tutors out there. These are just the ones we know firsthand of. If you know of somebody who's wonderful, who's not on our list, let them know, let us know. Many tutors will also offer group classes, or you can get a group class at, Kaplan does a test prep. So there are group classes out there. There is online practice, and both the SAT and the ACT offer online practice that is individualized for the student. So when you take that PSAT in October, you can load that individual your results on that PSAT to Khan Academy, and Khan Academy for free will create an individualized testing prep plan for you. And again, it's hooked it to your PSAT score. So it saw where you were, just knocking the ball out of the park, and it probably doesn't hit that too hard. And then it sees maybe where the student struggled, and it gives a lot of practice there. And again, works as the student shows more and more mastery, it raises the level of the difficulty. I love that that is online because you can get it when you want it. I love that it's individualized, and I love that it's free. That's really nice. ACT does something very similar, but not for free. From ACT, it's for $99 and it's through Kaplan. But again, it's also individualized and it's online. I happen to think you take the test, at least right now, you take the test on paper. So perhaps it would be good to practice on paper. So another good strategy is to order or go to a bookstore and get a review book and just kind of follow the practice of that book. I like that strategy, one, because it's not that expensive. Those books usually are $17, $18, $19, and it's the same format as the test. It's even the same weird kind of papery, weird paper. So at least you've used that kind of paper before. Again, to really follow through is really key here. Doing these great test strategies the week before the test is not going to give the same results as doing this for a couple months before the test. You can take a screenshot of this. We'll also share it in email. But these are the testing dates for 2021, 2022. One thing you can notice is that the registration date usually is about a month before the test date. They also have a late registration date about 2 weeks before the test date, but then there's a late registration fee. So again, we'll share that in email, but there's the SAT dates, ACT dates, again, kind of the same thing, that the registration date is usually about a month before. Because so many test sites are having a hard time sometimes finding proctors, those test sites fill up quickly. So even though the registration deadline is a month before, it would not be a bad idea to register 6 or 7 weeks before. And that way, you know that the site that's closest to you will have a seat ready for you. Okay. So testing. Well, let's talk about not testing. We are in a test optional landscape so different than what we knew even 5 years ago. So today, 74% of schools are test optional. A week from now, I bet it's a higher number than that. So what I have here is just kind of a breakdown. This is 315 schools. Obviously, there are a lot more than 315 schools in the country. But this is kind of a broad sampling of different types of schools. And in this sampling, about 3%, and that's actually the same nationally, about 3% are requiring SAT, ACT, absolutely. About 45% are test optional right now. They're just giving it a try for this year. About 7% have said, okay, well, we're going to try it for 2 or 3 years so we can have some longitudinal data. About 37% have been test optional for years. So Bates College has been test optional for 30 years. So that's really interesting to know. And then about 8% are test free. So even if you send a test, they won't look at it. All California state schools right now are test free. So the only person that's unfortunate for is the student who got the 36 on the ACT, and they're so proud of it, and the state of California is not going to look at it. But again, I come back to knowledge is power. So even though a student and their family might be thinking, we're going to go test optional, Dr. Johnson and I so encourage the student, just take the test so you have the score. And that way, you know for sure whether you want to send it or not. If you have any questions about that, please let us know. We get articles about it probably 2, 3, 4 times a week because it is such a hot topic and because the landscape is still shifting as we go. So we work really hard just to stay abreast on all of the data with that. Anyway, thank you. I get excited about testing. I get more excited about students, but I like to know the facts, and thank you for letting me share them with you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Prince, so much. A lot of great information. And so in keeping with that, so now what, right? So everyone take a big pause or a deep breath, right? So now what, as you're amazing, and your students are amazing. We love working with the fact that we get to work with your students. So I hope that is evident as we're sharing this information, and definitely want you as our families to feel empowered and well-informed about this process. And so what's going on now, right? Like, and what are our students doing? And so I really look at that first part as a continuum, right? And so Ms. Prince talked about that youth science resource that we're going to help your students work through when they do co-ed, either the second quarter or the third quarter, which is like springtime. And so really, as she said, start with self. So our students, were encouraging them to really think about their interests, their strengths, what they're looking for, and gain a deep understanding of that. And then know their options. And that's why we're championing, if you're able to take that, college tour whenever you go out of town coming soon, or encouraging students to come to the college rep visits that we have and just know what's out there, using the FISC guide, using the college finder and that resource on SCORE to see those 2,000 plus schools, right, that's available to our students. And something else, we have a lot of collegiate alum, right, that are in school now. So even thinking about, who do I know that's in college now? And maybe that's even a relative, or maybe it's where their parent, or maybe you went to school. So considering what's all out there, and then building their list and testing, which we talked through. And then we fast forward real quick to talk about the college's decision. And so that's really moving into that senior year. Students are starting to apply and they're hearing back from those colleges, and then students making their decision. You may have heard this, especially if you have older children who've walked through this process, and you've walked through this process with that decision day. That decision day is May 1st, where colleges want to know and they want to receive that enrollment deposit that the student is coming to that college or university. And then that great day, right, perhaps in August of, for your students, will be August 2023, is that right?
Yes.
Gosh, I had to say it slow so I can make sure. 2023, that they'll be on campus, prayerfully or hopefully at the college of their choice. And so at the bottom, we have this cycle, right, of discovery. They're discovering themselves, discovering their interests, and then doing that research on the options that are available in terms of colleges and universities, and really taking time to reflect. What is it that I like about this campus? What didn't I like? What was the environment and atmosphere? What's the culture of this campus? And how does that align with the values that I have? And even as families, as you talk through, what are the values that we have as a family, and what's going to be the best place for our student to feel that and express that? And then that communication, which if I could circle that right now, right, and highlight it, I would do that. But you all can just take your finger and highlight that, in the air. But communication is so key. And that's why, I'm loving, having these conversations as a family, at the table, right? Ms. Prince and I both have tables in our office. Let's sit at the table and really talk through these things so that we can all be on the same page, and as we help your students. And then there are some decisions, right? There are some decisions that have to be made. And then, like I said, it's just a cycle that continues really in life, not just with the college decision, but in other areas of life. And so what else can your student be doing now? Junior year is that time to invest and engage. We definitely encourage and want our students to stay focused academically. We champion that because that matters. That matters for the work they're doing now and their growth. It also matters in terms of college admissions, as we will be submitting those transcripts to colleges. So they'll be looking at that information, the transcript, the curriculum, the rigor that they are so getting here at Collegiate. Also, we want our juniors to strengthen their engagement in those extracurricular activities and go ahead and take on the leadership positions that are afforded to them and responsibilities in their club, in their activities, on their sports team, and even in the community, as we know our students are involved in other activities outside of Collegiate. Of course, continue to strengthen those relationships with teachers. In the spring of junior year, if I'm not mistaken, and Ms. Prince can correct me if I'm not, we want our students to think about, who are those teachers that could write a recommendation letter, because students will be required to at least have 2 teacher recommendations when they're applying to college during senior year. And so we'll work with students on that, and they'll out information to be able to share with teachers in terms of helping them write that letter. Also, we've mentioned college visits and rep visits coming to school here. We want our students to invest and engage in those opportunities and start to build that college application list, which we will work on together. We've already talked about preparing and executing their standardized testing plan, and thoughtfully consider summer plans. Is it participating in an academic enrichment program, perhaps at a college or university or through a community organization? Is it getting that first job, right, to earn some income? And that really is also taking on this leadership role in another type of way, but a great way for our students to continue to grow in their character, in their involvement in the community. And so, and perhaps doing something related to their passion that could lead to what they're going to study in college. So we want our students to definitely be mindful of what summer looks like for them. And then in senior year, applying yourself. We want our students to continue. Yes, you saw Miss Prince.
Yeah, you got
on the
this.
screen doing the, I forgot what it's called, but just getting excited. So we want our students to continue to stay engaged in their classes all year long. That means from August until May, right? Finishing standardized testing, Ms. Prince mentioned, we do have some seniors that will take that September ACT or even that October ACT or October, I think it's on the 1st or 2nd SAT this year. But for your students, it would be, next year as seniors, if needed, if they still want another go at it, we definitely encourage that. Of course, they're going to be finalizing that list and strategy. And guess what? Not only do we have a junior family meeting, we have a senior family meeting, right? So we can really talk through, okay, this is the list. We're good with it, and let's move forward into execution. Or we thought this was the list, maybe we need to come back in and have another meeting to clarify and then be able to move forward. We are ready to continue to meet with your students and families, through the process. And I think you all know that. Of course, here's the execution, actually completing those applications for college and scholarships. And then as well, our seniors will be doing their senior speech. And so what a great milestone, right, for our seniors to have as they're rounding out their collegiate career. Yep. And then how can we best support your students? We are student focused. We are data driven. And I'll add another word in here that you probably heard us say before. We're comprehensive, right?
Thank you.
As you were, and first, thank you for continuing to stay engaged with us through this recording. But we want to share, and hopefully you all are grabbing a hold of this. We do individual meetings. Of course, your students are assigned college counselors to work with them. We mentioned the family meetings, small group discussions, co-ed classes. We have alumni that are ready and excited to talk about their experience in applying to college and their experience actually on their college campus. And then also application review. What's been so cool, I think Ms. Prince can also speak to this, as we're working with the seniors this year, when they're like, you know what, I think I'm ready for you to look over everything before I click submit. What an amazing time. And I've actually helped a student this week, and I said, yeah, you're ready, and we celebrate that. And so just know that before applications go out the door, air quotes, because everything's online now. So before that button is submitted, we are taking a thorough look. And when I say we, I mean myself, Ms. Prince, and Ms. Gahan are taking a thorough look at students' applications before they submit it, and providing informative programs. So we hope that this has been informative for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. The other one, I'm looking at this list and I'm not quite sure how to put this on there, but hallways of, I think about all of the conversations that we all have with students in the hallways. And sometimes they're about Saturday's soccer game or about this coming Friday's theater performance. But know that we get to know the students and their families and these family conferences and the individual conferences, but we all feel so lucky to get to be part of their lives in the hallways, and kind of just that day-to-day interaction I say that as I'm watching people go down the hallway, is just like a highlight in our professional lives. So know that daily interaction and daily relationship with them really just means the world to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so this is our team. So happy that you can contact me, you can contact Candace Johnson, you can contact Sarah Gahan. We are all here for our juniors, for our seniors. And, you know, as Dr. Johnson said, we're comprehensive. So we're here for our 9th and 10th graders too, but juniors, no stress, but we're almost done with the seniors. Our eyes are about to turn to you, and we are excited about that. I hope our juniors and their families are as excited as we are.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of contact information there. So if you have any questions on this, please do reach out. And thank you for hanging out with us for a while here today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.